A submarine's engine whirred beneath the Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of New Jersey. The crew checked charts, plotted their next move, and prowled the seas for their first victim. Unbeknownst to them, they'd meet a bizarre fate, one that would be debated for decades after, and still so almost a century later. So, what exactly became of the submarine nicknamed U-Who? Welcome to Shipwreck Sunday. My name is Eleanor. Just a quick disclaimer for a younger audience before we dive in. This story may be disturbing to some, so viewer discretion is advised. Okay everyone, let's get into it. Thank you so much to our members for choosing this week's episode. Today we get into U-869, the lost Nazi German submarine that just might have been finally found after all of these years. The mystery comes from her disappearance, and her career is rather unassuming for such a mysterious submarine. U-869 was a Type IXC-40 U-boat of the Kriegsmarine during World War II. These submarines were slightly larger than the original Type IXCs. U-869 was ordered on August 25, 1941 by Nazi Germany, and she'd be built by Deutsche Schiff- und Maschinenbau AG Weser in Bremen, Germany. She was designated yard number 1077 and laid down on April 5, 1943. Before we get much further into her story, let's look at her specs. The U-boat U-869 displaced 1,126 long tons surfaced and 1,237 long tons submerged. She was 251 feet 10 inches long overall, 192 feet 9 inches long at the pressure hull, a beam of 22 feet 6 inches wide overall, a beam of 14 feet 7 inches wide at the pressure hull, a height of 31 feet 6 inches tall, and a draft of 15 feet 4 inches deep. As for installed power, she was powered by two MAN M9V 4046 supercharged 4-stroke 9-cylinder diesel engines capable of producing 4,340 horsepower for use while surfaced, and two Siemens Schuckert 2 GU 345-34 double-acting electric motors producing a total of 1,000 shaft horsepower for use while submerged. This turned two propeller shafts, giving her an average speed of 18.3 knots while surfaced and 7.3 knots submerged. Her range while surfaced was 13,850 nautical miles at 10 knots and 63 nautical miles at 4 knots while submerged. She was capable of operating at depths of up to 750 feet and was serviced by 4 officers and 44 enlisted. Now let's look at her big guns. She was equipped with a Fumo 61 Hochentwiel U radar system, which was common for the German Type 7, Type 9, and Type 21 U-boats. It was the marine version of the Fuji 200 Hochentwiel radar system and was primarily used for detecting ships and other large targets on the water's surface, aiding in navigation and target acquisition. In October of 1944, she was equipped with a snorkel underwater breathing apparatus. As for things that go boom, she was equipped with 6 torpedo tubes, 4 in the bow and 2 in the stern, 22 21-inch torpedoes, one 4.1-inch SK C-32 deck gun capable of holding 180 rounds, one 1.5-inch flak M4SAA gun, and 2 twin-mounted .79-inch C-30AA guns. Her identification codes are listed as M49163. She'd be launched on October 5, 1943, and undergo sea trials where we discovered that TEP step that I mentioned earlier. She was commissioned on January 11, 1944, being assigned to the 4th U-boat flotilla from January 26th to November 30th, 1944 for training, and the 33rd U-boat flotilla from December 1st, 1944 to February 11, 1945 for active service. After her launch, Kapitänleutnant Helmut Nürburg was assigned to U-869. And I love being assigned captain of this channel. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Want to live like Eleanor? Visit our Amazon storefront in the description of this episode to see our favorite shipwreck essentials and help support the channel. Okay, let's look at her bizarre and incredibly short career. U-869 would go on exactly 1 patrol. That's it, just 1. Not to mention, it was an utter failure. She sank no Allied ships, she raided no merchants, and her sinking was a mystery with numerous theories that we will cover in just a bit. The U-boat suffered no casualties until one cold, fateful day in February. On February 11, 1945, U-869 was lost, killing all but one of her 56 crew members. Herbert Guczewski was not on board as he'd become ill just before the patrol, and was then pulled from action to recover. He'd be the one lucky survivor, and everyone else on U-869 would perish. But what happened? Why did she sink? Don't worry, we're getting there. On February 28, 1945, the American destroyer escort USS Fowler and the French submarine chaser L'Indiscret conducted a depth charge attack on a submerged contact in the Atlantic near Rabat, Morocco. Morocco, for those unaware, borders Algeria, the Mediterranean, and the Atlantic across the sea from Spain. The two ships reported a kill, although little visible evidence was presented to confirm the kill. Based upon the information provided, U.S. Naval Intelligence rated the attacks G, no damage. U-869 had been previously ordered by the Supreme Commander of the Kriegsmarine Karl Donitz to move her area of operations from the North American coast to the Gibraltar area, possibly putting her near this area at the time of this odd attack. Post-war investigators upgraded the rating from G, no damage, to B, probably sunk, leading to the erroneous historical record that U-869 was sunk here near Gibraltar. For numerous years, this attack was assumed to be the one that sunk her. However, she was found off the American East Coast, making this impossible. The assumption is that she never actually received orders to go to Gibraltar or later received separate orders to stay off the coast of America, where she'd be discovered. In 1991, a former wreck diver and the captain of Seeker, Bill Nagel, learned of a wreck off New Jersey, and he decided to take a diving expedition to the site to check it out. On November 2, 1991, an unidentified U-boat wreck was located 240 feet deep off the coast of New Jersey. This depth can be hazardous for scuba diving and pose some serious difficulties to look into this wreckage. She was nicknamed U-Who, like U for U-boat, and the exact identity of this submarine was up for debate for a long time, and it was long assumed to be either U-550 or U-521. The discoverers of U-Who, John Chatterton, Kevin Brennan, and Richie Kohler, continued to dive the wreck for the next several years, trying to glean any clues as to who she might be. Remember how I said this was a hazardous wreck to dive? 3 divers, Steve Feldman, Chrissy Rouse, and Chris Rouse, all died exploring U-869. Rest in peace to them. Eventually, the dive team stumbled upon a clue. Buried in the wreckage was a knife with the name Horenburg inscribed on it. This was the name of a crew member. This immediately pointed to U-869. However, upon learning the submarine had been supposedly sent to Africa, this piece of evidence was initially disregarded. A few years after this, they found part of the UZO torpedo aiming device and a spare parts box from the motor room engraved with the serial and other identifying numbers. Again, this pointed directly to U-869, and on August 31st, 1997, they concluded that U-Who was in fact U-869. The submarine's wreck is at approximately 39 degrees 32 minutes 56 seconds north, 73 degrees 19 minutes 56 seconds west, relatively near Convoy CU-58 off New Jersey. They'd finally found her. But what happened to her? We'll find that out in a minute, but first, thank you so much to our amazing YouTube members and patrons. If you'd like to have some awesome perks like episodes a full day in advance, join our YouTube memberships today. Okay friends, let's investigate exactly what happened to U-869. Those who'd found U-869 first believed she'd fallen victim to her own torpedo, which might have become a circle runner. Torpedoes manufactured later in the war had acoustical seeking capability, meaning they would follow the sound of a ship to hit their mark. It was theorized that the torpedo was initially fired in a turning pattern, and when it missed her target, it went to the next nearest source of sound, U-869's propeller whirring in the water. At least 2 other German U-boats were allegedly lost due to their own torpedoes, U-337 in 1944 and U-972 in late 1943. Chatterton and Kohler based their theory largely on a lack of evidence to support other causes for sinking, claiming there was no reported naval activity in the vicinity, thereby ruling out a sinking by attack. To further support their claim, the damage to the hull was from the outside, and thereby ruled out an internal explosion. This problem also affected the U.S. submarine force at least twice, as seen with USS Tang and USS Tullabee. Noted wreck diver, researcher, and author Gary Gentile adamantly rejects Chatterton and Kohler's theory. He cites attack logs and eyewitness accounts from the crew of 2 destroyer escorts suggesting that the U-boat was initially damaged with a Hedgehog launched by the USS Howard D. Crow, and then subsequently damaged with a depth charge by the accompanying USS Coiner, which would also explain the external explosion. Robert Kurson recounted the story of U-869's discovery in the book Shadow Divers in 2004, recounting all of the previous information I just relayed to you. In June of 2005, the U.S. Coast Guard stepped in to clear the air, and then awarded the sinking to the two destroyers. This was confirmed by Marlin Berkey, who was on a destroyer as part of the Pacific Fleet entering New York Harbor after the war's end. The submarine showed up on sonar. Berkey's destroyer depth charged the sub. It sank as evidenced by oil and debris that floated on the surface. The destroyer's crew was allowed to place a broom upside down atop the main mast coming into New York, which signified clean sweep, or that they protected the American coast from attack. Contributing to these findings are two damage holes in the wreck of U-869, which are more consistent with the attack reports that cited two explosions than with the circle runner theory, which explains only one hole. The official records state that U-869 was destroyed on February 11, 1945 by two U.S. destroyer escorts, and the destroyers reported sinking a U-boat on February 11, 1945, the same day U-869 disappeared. So I am in line with the Coast Guard, and I believe U-869 was attacked by Howard D. Crow and Coiner off the coast of New Jersey. This wreck is a diving site that you can visit off the coast of New Jersey. However, it is a German war grave and should be treated with respect. Diving is okay, but don't disturb, damage, or take things from the wreckage. Leave that to the researchers. Please keep in mind that the depth the submarine's wreckage sits at can be treacherous for divers, and has already taken the lives of 3 professionals. If you dive U-869, proceed with caution and ensure you have all of the legal paperwork and assistance you need prior to the dive. The U-boat's only survivor, Second Radio Officer Herbert Guczewski, had come down with pneumonia and pleurisy shortly before U-869's departure, and as horrible as these two diseases are, they were his saving grace. Like the rest of the world, he had no idea what became of the crew until 1999 when he was watching television and saw something about her. He watched a program that became the PBS Nova episode Hitler's Lost Sub, and immediately contacted the producers. They interviewed him, and placed a portion of this interview in the 2000 American broadcast. And with this, the mystery of U-Who had been put to rest, along with the sub at the bottom of the Atlantic. While Chatterton and Kohler were at work in 1991 searching for U-869 and unlocking her secrets, a disaster was unfolding across the Atlantic Ocean. An Italian ferry was at the edge of Livorno Harbor, ablaze with 141 people trapped inside, praying for a way out. They coughed as thick black smoke swirled throughout the ship and up into the air, the fire crackling and lashing at the hull. She and her passengers and crew faced a terrifying, uncertain future, leaving many to wonder, what happened to the Moby Prince? Find out on next week's episode of Shipwreck Sunday.